Well, welcome to a special edition of Public Works Update. On today's show, we're going to be talking everything on diverging diamond interchanges, or affectionately called DDIs. I'm your host, Shannon Austin, and today we're going to try to answer all the questions you may have on diverging diamonds by listening from our experts, Jason Genstead from HDR Engineering, as well as Harry Johnston from the DOT local office here in Sioux Falls. So we're going to just jump right into it. Let's talk a little bit about history of diverging diamond interchanges. And Jason, I'm going to have you start because you guys kind of have started here with 41st Street and Interstate 29 project years ago. So let's kind of talk. When did they come to be, and are they doing them across the United States, or is it just South Dakota? Give us a little bit of an update on that.
Yeah, well, good to be here this morning, Shannon. And so, yeah, we've been fortunate enough to work on a lot of different interchange projects throughout the state of South Dakota. And so if you go back to the early 2000s, we had a lot of traditional diamond interchanges. That's what was there. And so when we started to look at these urban areas with higher amounts of traffic in Sioux Falls, you know, we had a few years from 2000, 2010 where we were looking at these urban single point interchanges like we have on 12th Street and Madison and 10th Street and 229. And certainly there's some major benefits of going that direction. And as we were, you know, kind of getting closer to 2010, this new trend of diverging diamond interchanges really started to show its face, certainly in the central part of the U.S. And so we were starting to follow the benefits of them. In 2011 was when we did the first corridor study on 41st Street, looking at options really from the Big Sioux River all the way out through Marion Road. And the diverging diamond at that point was one of the interchanges that we studied. And as we looked at it, we really found with the traffic movements that we had on 41st Street, in the AM peak hours, we have this prevalent movement that's going really from the west side of town, coming either on 41st to keep going west or to go north on I-29. And so I think we generated 1,500 left turns in the morning. And so we looked at a variety of interchange types, but the DDI really stuck out because after we went through one signal, those left turns had a free movement to go north on the interchange. And so instead of having to go through two intersections with signals, we could go through just one. And then if you go to a DDI, you have less phases because you're not handling those turning traffic. So the efficiency allows us to push more traffic through. And as we've learned that, we've really kind of adapted and said, okay, these work really well. A lot of our interchanges around town have these large turning movements, and that's really where the DDIs work very well. And we were involved with the one out in Rapid City on La Crosse. We did the planning study along with the DOT and the city out there. Out in Benson Road and 229, we have a business park that sits right on the west side of the interchange there, and so we have this AM traffic that's really heavy. We have over 1,700 vehicles that take a left turn to go over towards the business park or over towards Cliff Avenue, and so again, heavy turning traffic. They work very well, minimize the amount of time the vehicles are sitting there because we have less signal phases for them to have to go through. So
let's talk a little bit about those left turn numbers. I'm always amazed at the Benson and 229, and we're going to kind of jump around between each interchange here, but so 41st Street and Interstate 29 has, you said, 1,400, and Benson has 1,700, which is that's I believe the highest in the state.
It is. When we were going through the public meetings on it, I mean, there were so many people. It's like, wow, that's crazy. You know, there's nothing really. The development hasn't started. It's starting to now get to the east, but it's a very busy place out there. You know, you have a lot of businesses that have high employment numbers, and they're all going there in 20-30 minute time frame.
So from an engineer standpoint, those left turn crashes are probably the most the highest number of crashes that we like to solve with whatever type of device we can put in.
That's right.
And typically traffic signals would be the first thing to use, but these free right or these free lefts that the diverging diamond, I don't think people are going to understand how much more efficient these DDIs are.
Yeah. From a safety perspective, so the realignment of the DDIs, and people, that was one of the kind of things that build some anxiety is you're a little uncomfortable because you're going to the other side of the road. But what you're doing is you're removing those left turn conflicts. And so when you talk on the safety side, on a traditional diamond interchange, you go into a left turn pocket, you wait for either a yellow flashing arrow or a green arrow. It's either permissive or protected. You take a left to get on the ramp, but at that time you could have impeding traffic that's coming on the main line.
Sure.
And so that's every time that you have a vehicle trans through there, there's a potential for a conflict between the two directions. Well, when you go to the diverging diamond, all those movements have already gone through the signal straight. They're on the left side. All of those left turn movements are not at conflict with any other traffic anymore. And so when we looked at the safety benefits in comparison from a traditional interchange to a single point urban interchange to a diverging diamond, the diverging diamond really showed that over time we're going to have less crashes and it's going to be more safe.
Okay, so statewide, I believe in the next few years we'll probably have 4 or 5 that'll be operational. So as we look on the design side, we had Rapid City and La Crosse has one that's already open. We have 41st Street and Interstate 29, Benson and 229, Brandon, Highway 11, Interstate 90, and then we also have one at 85th and Interstate 29. None of those are essentially exactly alike from the construction side, but on the design side, are they kind of a similar analysis to go through to get to the DDI on design?
From a traffic operations, that component of it, yes. I mean,
Okay.
you're really looking at it no different than any other interchanges. You're looking at the movements, the traffic volumes that take place. But it's really, if you think about the traffic patterns, that's where you're really seeing.
Okay.
You'll really recognize them as you go through. So if you're, for example, in Brandon, people are leaving north out of Brandon. The interstate is on the north side, and so a lot of people are leaving in the morning and they're heading towards Sioux Falls, so they're going west. And so if you look at the geometrics of that diverging diamond, we have 3 through lanes, and then we have 2 lanes that get off onto the ramp. So it's a dual movement to get onto the ramp. At night, we have a dual ramp lane that comes on to go back into town to the south.
Okay.
And so that's the heavy movement. Those are the volumes that we need to manage. The other movements are generally lower, and so they're single lane movements. Benson Road, very similar. It's in the morning, it's at high peak going north to west. In the evening, they're going east to south. And so you're going to see really those interchanges cater to those movements, because that's, if we can make those movements efficient, the interchanges are going to empty out and they're going to work very well.
Which is just better for everybody using it.
so realistically, I mean, the design is really following what we believe the traffic is going to do. So in the case of 85th Street, that's a new interchange for us. We don't have those existing patterns to follow, and so we have travel demand models that we look at, and so we look at where the land use is going to take place around the interchanges. We're working with the communities of Sioux Falls, the DOT, and we're really trying to forecast, okay, this is what we believe the traffic will be doing, and then we design it accordingly to manage those volumes.
Okay, so, all right, so I'm going to switch over to Harry to talk a little bit about construction. So of those DDIs, the construction of all of those is and are different, right? So talk a little bit about the differences between each one of those.
So when you start out in Rapid City actually has 2 structures that they built. They had the existing structure that they refurbished, and then they built a new one beside it. So there's actually 2 structures there, and then that surfacing is actually asphalt on either side of that diverging diamond. When we moved to 41st Street, which is the second one in the state, that one we actually kind of retrofitted the existing substructure, used the existing girders, widened it a little bit. The bridge itself over 29, and then it's a single bridge deck altogether.
Okay, so one bridge.
One bridge,
okay.
Yes, at 41st Street. Benson Road is the third one that we're working on, and that one we are doing just some rehab work on the existing structure over 229, and then we built a new bridge to the north, and so that's a 2-structure type DDI. And then moving to Brandon, that one is a single structure. So that one is over I-90. It's just one one single deck over top of I-90.
Okay, so how do you, from as far as the DOT goes, how do you make that decision on whether or not you just widen like you did on 41st Street or construct a new one like on Benson Road? Is it because of the existing structure or what?
So when we're looking at, say, retrofitting or building these new interchanges, what we're looking at is what we have in place. You know, if there's good quality substructures or girders or things like that that we can still have a lot of life left, we can definitely go in and retrofit them and make them work and build them, you know, best use of taxpayer dollars as possible.
Right.
Some of them have reached their lifespan, so at that point we completely tear out the structure or it's too narrow. Like the one in Brandon, for example, that one is a continuous concrete bridge, and we're going back with a girder bridge. So it'll actually, it's a concrete girder bridge that we'll be building over top of I-90, so the elevation will actually raise a little bit in order to get your clearance underneath. But at the same time, it'll be a girder structure rather than a continuous concrete bridge.
Okay, so just a little bit different on all of them. Okay,
Yep.
So construction-wise, you know, the medians that we have, and I'm going to speak specifically about 41st Street and Interstate 29 because that one's near and dear to my heart. So it takes a long time to be able to get the islands and the medians and everything. Talk to me a little bit about that, because I noticed that we had asphalt, temporary asphalt on both ends of the bridge last fall, and then we came back with construction and an actual concrete this year. Talk to me a little bit about that.
So absolutely. So when we were going through kind of phasing of the contract and looking at how would we build it and how would we open it and put this new type of interchange out to the public, we wanted to kind of time it into a season that we're not having to move snow, things of that nature. So on 41st Street itself, we actually looked at, and we did some temporary asphalt at the islands. So all of the ramps were kind of, we maintained traffic just straight through like a normal road each direction. And so then this spring when we came in 2024, we ended up building the islands and getting that configuration out there. And then it was kind of stages. So we had it one lane each direction on the DDI. Then we moved to 2 and 3 lanes as we finished the islands and made sure the pedestrian movements were all there. So during construction, you know, we had to limit that pedestrian movement, put in some alternate locations or paths for the pedestrians, because we're maintaining not only the vehicles but the pedestrian traffic as well.
And certainly anytime we build a structure or even a road under construction, it just takes longer.
Absolutely.
So these projects are all about 2 years, and so the 41st Street in I-29 was a little bit longer because we didn't get the concrete down in time for the winter season, right?
Sure. Well, and most of the mainline concrete was actually completed, but it was just those islands in that configuration. So a lot of it's like 2.5, 2.25 year project type deal. So Brandon is similar. Benson Road is similar.
Okay.
Essentially, we want to get the main line put together, get it opened up, get the traffic flowing through it, and then that last year we come in and make tweaks or do some different things, finish up all the landscaping and stuff of that nature. Because usually it's kind of towards the end of the year when we're finishing up those projects, and so you run into seating restrictions and different things like that. But so that's that last year that we're coming in, or the spring of the year that we're kind of cleaning everything up and doing all the beautification and making it look better.
Well, I'm sure a lot of our drivers are very happy with that decision, just so they can get used to driving it in the summertime.
Right, absolutely.
Okay, so what do you see from challenges during having been through 2 constructions of these DDIs? Have you seen any challenges that are coming up that you're I mean, because we're learning on each DDI.
So some of our biggest challenges is just maintaining the traffic. So a lot of the interchanges that we have, you don't have a lot of other options to send traffic around. So we do try to minimize that impact to traffic and make sure that we're maintaining traffic. Maybe although it's reduced lanes, but they're able to go through those locations. We've worked with some other businesses in order to make sure that, say, their trucking configuration, we've done some temporary ramps and some different things to accommodate those as well. So, but yeah, the biggest thing is just trying to figure out how can we maintain traffic.
Right.
And then limit our exposure to the traveling public as well by either day counts, or they can only close a ramp for a certain number of days,
yeah.
or half at a time, or different things that way, in order to make sure that we're moving forward, giving the contractor the best possible, or the best opportunity to build it efficiently and timely, but then also not affecting the traffic.
Sure. So, okay. So when we look at design as well as construction, and Harry, you kind of touched on it, maintaining pedestrian access across the bridge. So, you know, we had hundreds of people traveling along 41st Street crossing the old interchange. So, Jason, talk to me a little bit about how did we decide to put the pedestrian pathway in the middle, and then talk to me about, you know, is it being well received from the pedestrians? So Jason, I'll let you start first.
So great question. So one of the concerns with the pedestrians, if you would place them on a diverging diamond on the outside, is they have that movement where they're crossing a free flow of the turning traffic onto the ramps.
Okay.
And so not that it can't be done, but you'd look at it, if your volumes are high, like 41st Street, and you have, you know, even at the PM peak hour when people are coming southbound to get back on 41st Street, again, we have a high right turn volume. So if you can imagine everybody trying to navigate these, you know, these free movements, it gets challenging. So by taking them really realistically, now you're taking them from the islands and you're putting them in the center, they're crossing really a standard through movement.
Okay.
And so although they're on a skew, it's a standard through movement. They get to the center, and all those movements that are taking place on the ramps now are not in conflict with the pedestrians. And so again, it's one of those, the first time you see it, it's like, whoa, I'm going to be in the center. That doesn't, you know, seem to make sense
weird.
to me. But you know, if you go out on 41st Street, and I encourage people to do so, is you do feel really comfortable being out where you're between the lanes. We have either concrete barriers, some rails in some cases. Each interchange is different, but very safe, very efficient for the pedestrians to get across. I think, you know, before 41st Street with the sidewalks there, we had a little bit more of a vertical curve over there, and I know certainly as we get closer to the winter months that people were navigating them in wheelchairs. It was, you know, it's kind of difficult to navigate that grade, and boy, this will be much easier for them to do so. But yeah, that's really the main difference, is we're trying to not have those pedestrians have to cross, you know, through those free turn movements.
So I was looking, we have traffic cameras that are out there, and I was checking it out in the dusk and dark hours, and we have beautiful lighting, accent lighting that is actually on the walkway in those concrete little walls, so pedestrians can see exactly where they're walking and where they're supposed to go. So DOT did a great job designing that.
Yeah, and I think you'll see the lighting applications at each interchange again be different, because, you know, 41st Street, even though it's a commercial corridor, it does have a variety of other land uses, residential, and so you're going to get a lot of pedestrian movements. If you go to Benson Road per se, primarily the people using it are already at work. Maybe they're going for a lunch hour walk or something, but you're not going to have, you know, the nighttime users likely, because there's no residential that sits out there.
So at Benson, is it in the middle also?
It's in the middle as well.
And then how about Brandon?
Brandon's in the middle as well. Yeah.
All right. So maintaining that during construction, Harry, those pedestrian movements are certainly challenging. But have you heard anything after construction on pedestrian movements? Are they well receiving it?
It's been very well received.
Okay.
You know, I spoke with the area engineer in Rapid City, and it sounds like they've had great feedback on it from the businesses, the traveling public, and pedestrians as well. So it's all been actually fairly quiet, which is a good thing. You know, which means that they're able to travel through the interchange without being impeded.
Right.
And so it's a good movement for them.
Okay. All right. Well, let's divert over to public engagement or public education items. So I know that we've done a tremendous amount of educational public open houses, public meetings on the 41st Street and Interstate 29. Jason, talk to me a little bit about how well these are being received on the design side, and then we'll talk a little bit about how they're being received after. So
yeah, I mean, when you look at the majority of the people that come to the meetings, you know, there's a concern there that it's a new type of interchange, and it's, you know, they hear maybe on the press releases that they're going to have to go and drive on the other side of the road, and so they're very curious. No different than when we started building roundabouts. We had a lot of folks that would attend meetings and just, what do I have to do? How do I drive through these? And so the DOT and they purchased a large mat that they used at some of these open houses where it was on the floor 30 feet long, and people could kind of walk through, okay, if I'm driving a vehicle, this is what I'll have to do. Give them a very good picture in their head to start saying, okay, these are the reasons why we do it. And those are really nice, because we could sit there and we could talk about, you know, how the signals are going to work and why we did it this way, and trying to kind of reduce that concern that the first time that they get out there and drive through the interchange, that, you know, it's going to be hard to navigate. So as we transversed really from the public meetings into what is now reality, you know, I think we still have a variety of folks that are saying, I'm not sure I want to drive through the interchange yet. And as I read the comments that are coming through on the websites, it's, you know, 80% is very positive. The other ones, you know, it's probably less negative, other than they're still just like, I'm not sure that I want to drive over there yet. And that's okay. I mean, they are very directional, and so when you get to them, this idea that you're going to, you know, potentially drive on the wrong side of the road, it's not reality. It's the median gore areas, they really direct the traffic. We have a variety of pavement markings out there to help traffic get through them. But yeah, you know, the first one I drove through was by the Mall of America in Minneapolis, and it has a transit running down the center of it, and, you know, had no medians, and it had all these lanes, and, you know, it's like, well, I drove through, I'm like, well, I drove through my first diverging diamond interchange and it worked great, you know. And so, and that one had, you know, little amount of directional design, as, you know, just because it couldn't, but than ours do. And so I think people will really see the efficiency. I know already, talking with the city from the traffic perspective, they've looked at the cameras, the queues, you know, are much different than they used to be. They're almost non-existent at times. And certainly we have a heavy load of traffic. You have 30, you know, 1,000 plus vehicles that are going east and west on 41st. So, I mean, traffic isn't going to magically go away and we have no issues, but the efficiency will be known, and I think over time you'll just have a lot more people that are receptive to them.
I also drove through that DDI on the diverging diamond up by the Mall of America, and I made my husband drive through it a few times, and my kids were pretty excited about that. So I'm sure they love to be in my car with traveling through all those interesting traffic maneuvers.
My family too.
Yes. So, okay, so looking back at one of the very first open houses for 41st Street on the corridor study, when we had talked about DDIs, we had only less than a handful, probably less than 5 people that had ever driven through one. And at the end, right before we started construction, we had dozens of people. And so I think just the exposure certainly makes people more comfortable traveling through these diverging diamonds. Now, this being South Dakota, we certainly have winter and snow removal operations. So Harry, just kind of give us, you know, your teams will have to, you as well as the city of Sioux Falls will work together on removing snow from the DDI. How will you approach it?
Well, we've done some research, of course, so there's some things out there that you can look online and find videos of how people come in and clear the DDIs depending on lane configurations and ramps and everything else. So it's going to be different than what we used to do. So we've prepared ourselves, you know, with our standard equipment that we have, and then we actually, as long as some other things, but we bought another snowblower to be able to use with our skid steer in case we have to move some of that snow away from those walls and different things. But no, the public outreach that you guys were talking about as well, you know, we saw a transition from kind of as we were moving into telling them about the configuration, and then moving into construction, and then we had the text-in service that we had during construction.
That was wonderful.
Great feedback from that. And you know, I had one person at one of our public meetings in Brandon that's like, I've heard more about this than I've heard about any other job in the state. He was like, I'm almost tired of hearing about it. I'm like, well, that's good. So, and then we also have that campaign to be able to, right when we get done with construction, you know, we're still talking to the public and letting them know and giving them that information about how it works, how it functions. Right now, I don't have anything anticipated as far as the public maybe doesn't care how we're going to remove the snow as long as it's clear when they're ready to go to work.
Yep.
So probably won't be any sort of public involvement that way. But at the same time, we are looking at it. We're talking about it internally, looking through with my maintenance staff. And then, of course, working with the city, we always have a coordination meeting every fall to talk about how we're going to do things.
Right.
If things aren't working throughout the year, throughout the winter,
Yep.
we're trying to change or address just to try to make it the most efficient effort as possible.
Sure,
Because you don't want
absolutely.
to waste those movements with the plows and things like that, because they're larger trucks. You can't get them turned around easily. So how do we efficiently move through there and move
Yeah.
the snow?
And that's like with anything. I mean, years ago when we first started putting in medians, how are we going to remove snow about
Absolutely.
the medians? So, all right, well, this has been very, very great conversation. Appreciate both of your guys' times today. I do want to highlight, if any of you drivers or pedestrians or bikes, have concerns or comments, go to the DOT's website and make a comment. Plus, our website, Jason, is still open,
It
right?
is,
So
yeah.
they can make comments on the website, or certainly reach out to the City of Sioux Falls's website also. So thank you both so much for being here.
Absolutely.
Excited about this informational topic, and I cannot wait until we get all of them open.
Right, absolutely.
Won't be too long.
It won't be
Right.
too long. Thanks for watching.